Hey guys, it's Mr. Dildine. Just wanted to share with you real quick word of encouragement for today for FCA. So I'm shooting this one in my classroom because I have something here that I want to show you that's a little big and I don't plan on taking home. So anyway, I want to talk to you about two different guys, two prophets in the Old Testament. One's name is Elijah. Elijah came first, and he's really well known for calling fire down from heaven. He's one of the most bold prophets of the Old Testament. Calls out King Ahab for all these rotten things he's doing, and his wife as well, Jezebel, who is just like known as this horrifically awful woman throughout the entire Bible. Um, so Elijah goes to King Ahab and he says, "Hey, um, I am going to keep it from raining for 3.5 years." And I mean, of course, the king doesn't really care. He thinks he's an idiot. But then, his wife finds out and she wants to kill him. So Elijah takes off and disappears. He finds himself hiding out in the wilderness for over a year and a half. What's really interesting is that he stays by this brook called Cherith. And Cherith basically means something along the line of like school. Where he was taught to trust God, essentially. There, God brings him food every single day through crows. And what's interesting is that he always has a source of water because he's next to a brook. Now, the brook dries up. Well, why did the brook dry up? Well, the brook dried up because God said it wasn't going to rain for 3.5 years. And so after about a year and a half, 2 years roughly, the brook is dry and there's nothing to drink. Now, sitting back thinking about that, might be like, why would anybody want to serve a God who says, go tell these people it's not going to rain, and then go be thirsty out in the wilderness? I mean, God provided for him in every way, right? He had this water there for him. He even brought him food. He had shelter there. I mean, he's basically camping in the wilderness for 2 years. To some of us, that sounds fantastic. To others of us, we're thinking, where's the indoor plumbing? And a soda pop or something. We get caught up in our circumstances and in the luxuries that we have, and we get really nervous when we start to think that God has something more for us. It's hard for us to recognize that the reward of serving God and being obedient to what he wants is far greater than anything else we can imagine. Now, fast forward, of course, he becomes really well known for calling down fire and killing a bunch of prophets of Baal. But then what happens is he takes on a student. And the student, his name is Elisha. So there's Elijah teaching Elisha. So a lot of people get these two prophets confused. But Elisha, what's interesting about him is that when he's asked by Elijah, what can I do for you? His desire is to perform twice as many miracles as Elijah. So what he's saying is, I want to be an even better teacher than you. I want to be an even better prophet than you. I want to be known for twice as much miracles than what you're known for. One of the really, just one of my favorite accounts, and you'll notice I don't call Bible stories stories. A lot of people call them stories. I think of the word story as like a bedtime story. It's an account. It's a historical account of what happened. That is a testimony. Just using that word account instead of story, to me, is a small testimony that we believe something to be true. But anyway, so Elisha is surrounded by the enemy one day. And I mean surrounded, like this king who Elisha had been defeating secretly, basically. He finds out that Elisha is the reason why he's losing all these battles. And so he takes an entire army to the city that Elisha is living in. He surrounds the entire thing. And Elisha's servant, he's just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We're going to die. And Elisha, he looks at him and he's like, dude, There are so many more on our side than who are against us. And the servant doesn't see it. He doesn't understand. But across the hillside, and I can just picture this like just being the most amazing movie. I don't know why they don't make more movies about biblical things, but this is just be so incredible to see just this hillside just completely covered in fire. And these horses with just like flames coming out of their nostrils, and their manes are just got fire coming off of them. It would make any Marvel movie look ridiculous because it would just be so incredible to see. And then these angels sitting on top of them with their wings spread out, all flames coming out of it. And they've surrounded the entire army that is surrounding Elisha. Man, Elisha's obedience to God was to tell the Israelite king how to defeat this other guy. And it provided circumstances for him that didn't seem very fun either. Like Elijah, his obedience to God put him in an awkward position to where it felt like things weren't so great. Maybe obedience to God wasn't so great. Anyway, he ended up leading the entire army. They all went blind. He led all the bad guys into the Israelite camp, and then they fed them dinner, and like they parted ways as friends. It was incredible. But under those circumstances, you had to think, maybe you would be like the servant and be freaking out. I see a lot of things around the high school. I love being here with you guys every single day. One of the things that I see is that our circumstances, of course, are rather unique this year. But maybe like somebody's single, so they start dressing a certain way to get somebody's attention. Or maybe they're alone, and so they start wearing their hood up over their head, and they just want to keep being alone. Or maybe somebody's really just like, in a bad mood, and so they start yelling at people. And it's like, hey, your circumstances, whether it be loneliness, or whether it be fear, or whether it be joy, or whether it be just like impatientness that you can't wait, all those circumstances are similar to Elisha's and Elijah's, whether it be the brook or whether it be in town. If you're waiting for the stream to come, waiting for water, or if you're not opening your eyes to what God has in front of you and in store for you, one way or the other, we've got to think about how we're looking at our circumstances. I really get caught up in my circumstances. Hey, whether or not we have a lot of money in the bank, if we got a lot, I'm really happy. And if we don't, man, I can be really sad. Or if I'm in a lot of pain, like from work I've done or something like that, oh man, that can put me in a bad mood too. Or maybe I haven't eaten in a while, or otherwise known as like being hangry. I can get pretty upset. My circumstances cannot dictate who I am or how I act or how I treat others. What needs to dictate that? It has to be God. See, what we have to keep in mind, think about Elisha. He did exactly what God told him to be, what to do. Stood in front of the most powerful man in the area who, by the way, hated Christians. And his wife was basically making a hunting season out of them. But God told him to go stand before that man and tell him that I'm unhappy with him and that it's not going to rain in this nation for 3.5 years. Elisha was obedient and did that. And he didn't get to go live in a mansion afterwards. He slept on the ground and then waited for the brook that he was drinking from to dry up. There was nothing about that sounds attractive or fun to me. I mean, it's hard enough to give a speech in front of friends. It's hard enough to sit in front of this camera and create a video for you, the majority of which won't even be watching this video. Much more stand in front of one of the most powerful men in the world and tell him that what he's doing is wrong. The circumstances we're in, if we're living in obedience to God, if we're living in obedience to God, man, they have purpose. Whether they suck, whether they're great, you may be an orphan right now, like living in a foster home or on your own or your best friend's couch. Or you might be someone who has had it great their entire life. The circumstances you're in have purpose if you're living in obedience to God. They have purpose for greatness. Elijah is known as one of the most amazing prophets of all time. There are statues erected on the site right now where he called fire down from heaven. John and Peter and James, they all referenced Elisha throughout the entire New Testament. Elisha, on the other hand, he had something amazing in front of him, and a servant couldn't even see it. Elisha saw it. You have amazing things in front of you right now. You can more readily watch pastors from all over the world. You can more readily research questions that you have about the Bible right now. The opportunities to connect with other people are astonishing. They just blow my mind. My wife can talk to a friend of ours who is a missionary in India and talk about monkeys attacking them. It's insane. We can even watch videos of the monkeys walking through their yard, and they're half a world away. It's just crazy. God has you in the circumstances that you're in for a reason. My hope is that you're living in obedience. Because if you're living in obedience, the circumstances you're in have purpose for greatness. If you're living in disobedience, well, then you're in timeout. And your circumstances are there because you're dumb and you haven't repented. So think about that. This month is actually a time for Jewish people to consider if there's any sin in their life, this week in particular. Coming up soon in mid-October is the Feast of Booths. When we get to that, we'll be talking about something miraculous and wonderful. Have a great day. Hey, I'm so sorry I totally forgot how I wanted to share this thing with you real quick. Let me show you. So I started this project last year before we got out of school. So this is a flaming horse head. It's kind of what I imagine one of the horses might look like in that army that God sent. Get it in there. What do you think? Look pretty cool? Oh, that turned out all right. It looks smaller than my head, but it's actually quite large. You can come by my classroom and see it sometime. Say hi.